Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. And today we'll talk about decision making on returning employees to the office and specifically figuring out what employees want. Employers often don't have a great idea, much clarity about what employees want, especially during a time of disruption. And the pandemic has been a time of major disruption. So bringing employees back to the office is a very tricky question that depends on really understanding what they want. Because you don't want to be forcing people to go back to the office. It's going to be a pretty difficult environment if you try to force people, especially with the great resignation coming with so many people looking to leave their current positions and find a new job in the midst of this great hiring boom in the post-pandemic recovery. So what does the post-pandemic workplace looks like? It may not be what employers imagine. Employers, leaders, overwhelmingly have been successful through in-person interactions. They had successful 20, 30, some 40-year career through in-person, face-to-face, in-office interactions. And I really want to go back to January 2020. That's what they feel like doing, and that's what they feel like their employees should feel like doing, because they assume that that's what employees want. It's easy to make that assumption because that's what they want. Leaders want that, and they assume that their employees want that. Unfortunately, these assumptions are often wrong, bad, problematic because of mental blind spots called cognitive biases. And the biggest one applying to employees, where employers make assumptions about employees, is called the false consensus effect. The false consensus effect, it's a problematic mental tendency where we assume that those who are in our tribe, who are in our in-group, agree with us to a much greater extent than they actually do. So for example, though that our employees, the employees of various leaders, their team members, have the same opinion about returning to the office, permanent post-pandemic work arrangements. So that is an example. It's often a false assumption, something that really is not as accurate as we think we are in making that assumption. It happens in relationships all the time as well, by the way. This is why there's pretty significant divorce rate in the United States. People make bad assumptions about their partners and in all sorts of relationships. You have to understand that the pandemic caused major disruptions where people really shifted their perspectives. I mean, over a year of telework, that has really shifted perspectives, and all the things associated with the pandemic, the anxiety, the worries, the problematic lack of social interactions face-to-face that caused people to have different habits, norms, values. On returning to the office, they often don't think what employers think they should think or actually think they think. So it's good to get research on what employees actually think. And so that's what you want to do to avoid judgment errors. Avoid making hasty assumptions and instead look at this objective data, survey data, research of all sorts on what employees actually want. So what kind of data do we have? Well, there are 8 major surveys that have been done on what employees want that have been published in the spring of 2021. And so that's what that's where the surveys are coming from. And overwhelmingly, they show that employees want to continue working remotely for a large chunk of the time, some even permanently. So for a large chunk of their work week, employees want to work from home, the vast majority. And then a substantial minority want to continue working remotely full time. Over two thirds want to continue working remotely half the time or more. And that's kind of the lower bound of the surveys. Usually when you see questions of, how many people want to go back to the office for over half the work week, you'll see something like maybe 20%, 25%. It's rare that it goes in surveys up to 33%, 1/3. So you'll definitely over 2/3 want to work remotely half the time or more. And over a fifth, depending on the survey, you'll see anywhere from 20 to 35% want to work remotely full time. Over 2/5, and that this ranges from 42% to 58%, would quit if working remotely wasn't a regular option. If working remotely for at least half the work week wasn't a regular option, and some would quit if working remotely full-time wasn't a regular option. So it's something you have to understand where employees are coming from. Now, employees feel pretty good about remote work. You might have heard about complaints about remote work, of various problems, but overall they feel quite good about it, as you can see from the fact that they want to do it substantially. A lot of it they want to do remotely. It's a crucial benefit. They perceive it as a crucial benefit, something that they will sacrifice a lot of money for. 8% of their salary on average. So that's a major chunk of change that they are willing to sacrifice. So this is really something for you to consider as employers. And as employees, this is something for you to bring to your boss, and this is something they should know. Now, the surveys also show that there are a number of other benefits of remote work, where employees report having much more work-life balance when they work remotely, when they don't come to the office. Employees feel more productive, they feel more engaged, they feel happier. So all of these are large benefits: productivity, engagement, happiness. They're glad to be in your company. Those are all major benefits. And they also feel less stressed. So not only more on these things, productive, engaged, happier, but also less stress. So that's great. We definitely want employees who are productive, engaged, happy, and less stressed. Now, there are some problems with telework. So working from home is not all fun and games. There are some challenges that need to be addressed and that can be addressed effectively. They want fewer meetings. That's not too difficult to address as an issue of telework. Over half feel burned out, partially because the hours are stretched. There's insufficient boundaries on their time, which can be addressed. And over 3/4 get Zoom fatigue, again, tied to the meetings, lots and lots of meetings, which you can definitely have less of. So you want to solve a number of challenges with telework to make it easier going forward. Other telework issues include that there's a lot of challenges with employees getting sufficient money for their home offices, for their equipment like good laptops, good microphones, good video cameras, good bandwidth for their internet, so broadband and stuff like that. Those are issues. And for their furniture, good ergonomic furniture, nice comfortable home spaces, quiet home spaces. Another issue is that other folks may not be great at virtual communication and collaboration. So this is a challenge that they feel that, hey, there's a lot of challenges with others and themselves not having the greatest skills in virtual communication and virtual collaboration. Those are areas I've been really surprised to see companies failing to invest in, getting training in these areas. So getting training in virtual communication and virtual collaboration is something that would be really important for companies going forward. And research done during the pandemic backs up these survey results. That's the survey results. There's a lot of research showing that these survey results are quite accurate. Employee productivity rose following the transition to telework. So for example, there was a 5% increase, more than 5% increase from March-August 2020 compared to March-August 2019. So that period of time, that 6 months from March to August 2020 compared to March to August 2019, there was a 5% increase in productivity, which definitely shows that people going to work at home contributed to the rise in productivity. 94% of workers feel equally or more productive than before the pandemic working at home. So this is all about telework, of course. So we're talking about teleworkers only. And employers overall are pretty convinced of efficiency. So when we look at employers and when we ask them, are your workers more productive? Are they more efficient? They say yes, which makes sense because, of course, workers don't have nearly as much of a commute. They don't have a commute. They have to go from their bedroom to their home office, right? Instead of spending a couple of hours in the commute, stressed out and so on. And they don't have a lot of the hassles that come from working in the office. So coming in, various distractions, going through security, all of that sort of stuff. So they can spend more time being productive and actually doing work. Now, there are a number of other reasons telework will stick around. A lot of companies made serious investments in IT for remote work. So they'll keep using this because they now have this, much less of an obstacle. Employers and employees spent money and resources for home offices. There are some companies that funded home offices for their employees. And of course, employees themselves spent a lot of money on improving their home offices as well. So That's another benefit. And there's a big reduction in stigma around telework, which was a big issue, that people who are teleworking were perceived as phoning it in. And now teleworking is normalized. That's that big thing. So that's what you need to understand about workers, what they want when they return to the office. And again, the large majority of workers, over 2/3, more likely over 3/4 on average, so 2/3 is the lower bound, want to work from home over half the time. About 20 to 35% want to work remotely full time. And over 2/5 would quit if they weren't given the opportunity to work remotely at least half the time. And a number would quit if they weren't given the opportunity to work remotely full time. So those are things that you need to understand about workers and what they want. And the false consensus effect is a dangerous judgment error, which causes leaders to misperceive what their workers want and what they will be willing to do if they don't get what they want, which we're seeing in a number of companies where good workers, the top talent, is leaving because the company is really bungling the return to the office. All right, this has been another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Hope you liked it. Please leave your comments and thoughts on the show. We'd be glad to hear them. You can leave them in the show notes as comments, and you can, of course, email me at gleb@disasteravoidanceexperts.com with your questions, comments. Again, that's gleb@disasteravoidanceexperts.com. You'll find a lot more information about the show in the show notes, and I hope you subscribe to the show on whichever venue you've checked us out on, whether it's a video cast or a podcast. We have both. All right. I hope you have benefited, and hope this show will help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. Till next time, my friends.